week, we present a special episode of Quality Digest Live featuring our recent chat with Baldrige Program Director Robert Fangmeyer and Janet Wagner, CEO of 2013 Baldrige winner Sutter Davis Hospital. We'll bring you that exclusive interview when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for March 7th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richman, publisher of Quality Digest. Dirk Dusharme, my co-host, is on vacation. Last month, we were very proud to bring you an exclusive interview that looked at the Baldrige program from both sides. Director Robert Fangmeyer gave us the high-level view of the Baldrige system and its strategic vision. Meanwhile, Janet Wagner, CEO of Sutter Davis Hospital, talked to us about implementation and how it feels to actually win a Baldrige. We hope you enjoy this rare look at our industry's most prestigious award. And although you can't interact with Robert and Janet in real time today, I encourage you to send any questions you may have for them to us at qdl@qualitydigest.com. We'll be sure to forward them on to Robert and or Janet, respectively. And now, looking at the Baldrige from both sides, our exclusive interview with Robert Fangmeyer and Janet Wagner from the from the February 14th, 2014 episode of Quality Digest Live. Enjoy.
We have both Robert Fangmeyer and Janet Wagner with us, and let's just bring them on right now. Hi guys. Hi Janet. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
And Robert Fangmeyer, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, terrific. Okay, well, Janet, let's start with you. By the way, congratulations for being a Baldrige recipient this year. I think that is pretty exciting. You guys are right in our backyard, so that's exciting for us as well.
Thank you. We are. This has been an extraordinary experience for us. We are so honored.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Well, let me ask you. There seems what we've seen in the last few years. Actually, since Baldrige became available for healthcare organizations, is that there seems to be a lot of interest from healthcare organizations in the Baldrige. Why do you think that is? Why were you guys interested in it, Sutter Davis Hospital?
Well, one of the reasons I believe this is true is because Baldrige offers a framework that leads to sustained results and actually a sustainable organization. And healthcare right now is in the news every day, and our results are being looked at, and consumers are getting smarter. So this framework actually offers a lot to a leadership team in terms of being successful and competitive.
And when you say framework, just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, the Baldrige criteria offers questions and in a framework format that allows leadership teams to self-assess their organization. And so it's very specific, and it leads to a path of focus for a leadership team. And that has served us extremely well at Sutter Davis Hospital in keeping us on track, focused, and getting results.
And Bob, why do you think there's been so much interest in healthcare, Baldrige and the healthcare? I mean, I have noticed that over the last few years, there's almost always a healthcare winner in the Baldrige.
That's right. I think one of the reasons that we've seen is that the criteria help organizations, healthcare organizations in particular, accomplish three things that they're always trying to do. And sometimes these are conflicting goals, and that is to improve safety, improve healthcare outcomes, while also reducing costs. And it's the application of our framework that lets organizations manage themselves from a systems perspective rather than perhaps sub-optimizing these areas. And so hospitals in particular have seen a lot of improvement in their outcomes, and I think that's part of what's driving the interest.
And maybe a little bit more specifically, why is Baldrige necessarily a good fit for healthcare? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, was there a difference in applying Baldrige to healthcare as applying it to, small manufacturing or that sort of thing? Is there a natural tie-in for the Baldrige into healthcare?
I would say that I think organizations that have a strong sense of purpose and mission tend to do better. They're more attracted to Baldrige. The framework and the processes of Baldrige help an organization stay focused, as Janet said, and really achieve their goals and their mission. And when you have that strong focus and a strong sense of purpose, Baldrige really does fit well within the organization's efforts.
And I'm going to ask Janet this question too in a second, but when we think of a part of the Baldrige criteria is looking at results. So when you're looking at when the examiners are going out there and looking at results from within a healthcare setting, what specifically are they looking for?
Are you asking?
Let me put that to Bob first, and then we'll come back to you, Janet.
So one of the things that the Baldrige does is it asks organizations what are important to you. And so for healthcare organizations, there are a lot of outcomes that are publicly available. And certainly those are metrics that the examiner team will be looking at. But there are other things that a particular organization may be focused on. And so the examiners will spend plenty of time looking at the things that organizations say matter to them and see how they're performing and determine whether or not the processes that they're using are enabling them to achieve the results that they're after.
And Janet, from your perspective, when a Baldrige examiner came in, or when you were preparing for the Baldrige Award, what were you focusing on in terms of what you wanted to look at in terms of results, and what you wanted the examiners to look at in terms of results for Sutter Davis Hospital?
For us, it was sustained results over time, and that was one of the attractive things about the Baldrige journey, was receiving the feedback year over year. We learned very quickly how to improve results, how to course correct, and then how to sustain results. And for me, as a leader, I would say that's probably one of the most important things, is to be able to sustain results year over year and actually improve them. That framework, along with the site visits and the feedback, really focuses you on narrowing down to being able to prioritize those things, those behaviors, those systems, those processes that lead to consistent results. So for us, it was a very good fit, and actually energized us to do better.
And when you say results, can you be a little bit more specific when you say results?
Sure. When I look at results, I look at results in 5 pillars. So I like to ensure that my management team is balanced and gets results in all 5 areas. So whether it's finance and affordability, whether it's quality outcomes or service outcomes or satisfaction for our workforce, physicians, every one of those areas, no matter what you look at now in my organization, we have learned to get results and sustain those results. Now, everyone's not 100% all of the time. So as part of the learning, as we've been along this Baldrige journey, we've learned to course correct rapidly. And that was probably one of the most beneficial parts of the journey, was really having our management team feel comfortable and transparent about getting results, discussing results, and then having the examiners come in and validate that in fact, we were on the right track.
Robert, I have one for you, and this is, Janet actually just touched on this beautifully. I think the idea that leaders really need to drive this process, and I think that leaders and organizations always think that they're doing a good job, obviously, of managing their organization, but what is it about the Baldrige criteria and the Baldrige program that really helps leaders see maybe beyond what they're already seeing in their natural day-to-day activities that really helps the organization improve?
Oftentimes, leaders have blind spots that they just don't realize that they're not paying enough attention to. And that's one of the things that the criteria does for organizations. It helps ensure that you are paying attention to all those things that are going to help ensure that you're sustainable, help ensure that you can achieve outstanding results. And as Jana mentioned, having your leadership team review the criteria questions really can open your eyes, even at that level, as a basic, very simple self-assessment. You review the questions. Can you answer those questions? And oftentimes it's the questions themselves that help you realize, gee, we're really not paying much attention to this area, and maybe we need to be paying more attention to it. So the leaders have to really own the process, in a sense, if they really want to understand where they need to improve. It's important that they take that leadership role.
And actually, let me follow up on that a little bit with Janet. I believe when we interviewed you a month or so ago, you had mentioned one of the things that you did is you sent I think some of your management team for Baldrige examiner training. What kind of insights did that give them to be able to come back from that training and then, I guess, apply it within your organization?
Yes, we did. That was another breakthrough that we had, and that was taking advantage at the state level, sending our managers through examiner training. So they have the opportunity to see things from a different vantage point, a different angle. Sometimes when you're inside an organization being reviewed, you can only see it from your side of the table. When we sent them through examiner training, they had to step back and look at the criteria from a completely different viewpoint. And that, I think, was insightful, gave them a different skill set, and more opportunity for us to take a different look at our own organization without being defensive, but just being objective.
Is there something you can point to that maybe was an aha moment when your managers came back and applied some of this training that they'd gotten? Was there something that they discovered that maybe they wouldn't have discovered before, that maybe had little light bulbs going off?
You know, I don't know if that occurred so much with examiner training as it did with just going through the Baldrige process. I'll tell you, one of the things that really did the ahas for my management team was when they learned to look at approaches, deployment, integration, learnings, the ADLI approach, when they started to look at and mature results through the Baldrige process. So we had some depth and breadth to our results and how we trended results and correlated them, segmented results. Those kinds of things for my team were the aha moments and really propelled them to a different level of leadership, actually. So I would say those learning that process is what moved my team.
And Robert, back to you for a minute. I have a quick question for you about this, the criteria itself and the flexibility of the Baldrige program. I mean, we talk about the fact that none of these systems, and Baldrige is one of these, should ever be prescriptive. You know, they're not intended to say, do this, and you must do that, and here's the output. But you think about the range and the broadness of the different organizations that have applied and won the Baldrige over the years. There must be an idea that yes, there's a certain formula that goes into this, but that the program is flexible enough to encompass all of the different inputs and outputs that different organizations could have. So how does an organization like Janet's come to the program and do it in a way that fits their culture and gets all the benefits out of it?
Right. I think you touched on it. I mean, every organization is unique, to be honest. And our process accounts for that, in that the criteria themselves don't prescribe specifically how you should do something, but it does talk about things that you should be paying attention to and things you should be working on. The specific approach that you use will be determined by your organization, and what Baldrige does is it asks you, is that process working for you? How do you know, and what are the results that you're achieving by using that particular approach? Specifically within the assessment process, there's something we call the organizational profile. It's really the first few pages of the criteria booklet. And it sets the context for the examiners and for the organization that then is used to really tie all the criteria requirements to that specific organization. It asks you about your mission, it asks you about your vision, your goals, strategic challenges, etc. And all these factors will impact exactly what you do and how you do it. And that's really how the criteria are able to be flexible enough in order to apply to any organization. And you're right, we do see every different type of organization come through the door.
Bob, we just had a question come in from a viewer. Do you see a strong relation between employee engagement and the strengths in the other criteria?
Certainly there are linkages between employee engagement and, say, your outcomes, the results that you achieve. There's strong linkage between what you do in terms of your operational processes and employee engagement. If you don't have engaged employees, your operational processes probably won't be as effective as they would otherwise be. How and if they're involved in strategic planning also can impact employee engagement, et cetera. So throughout the criteria, there are a lot of linkages. And that's what enables, that's actually why we call it a systems perspective, is because it forces you to sort of pay attention to those linkages and how these different areas really interact and affect one another.
And Janet, I think you had mentioned, you had used the word engagement several times in our interview a while ago. Talk about that a little bit, what Bob was just saying.
Well, with the Baldrige criteria, I think there are lots of linkages to employee engagement or workforce engagement in general, because when you receive a site visit, they are looking for your strategic objectives. They are looking for your customer focus. They're looking for anything in the criteria to have seeds, or to have a reach all the way from the C-suite down to the frontline staff. So if your frontline staff can't connect to your strategic objectives or your customer focus or results, that's going to be very transparent to the examiners. So for me, having employee engagement was a critical factor. So anything that we did, we had to learn to cascade and make sense and have it simplistic enough to have a contribution both up and down the organization, from the employee base to the C-suite, and from the C-suite to the employee base. And that is inherent in all of the Baldrige in the Baldrige journey.
Now, when we think about let's say ISO 9001 or Six Sigma or many of the other quality programs that are out there, the tendency, I think, at least what we hear, is this is something only large companies have the time and the resources to do. Do people have that perception of the Baldrige, Janet? I mean, what was your perception going in?
Well, my perception from the beginning was, we're going to do this. It looks like a good framework. I didn't even think about that initially. I have experienced some feedback along the way, but I will tell you, we are a very small hospital. We've been on the journey for 7 or 8 years, and we used all of our internal team. I didn't hire anybody or add resources. We made this part of our daily work, and we made it part of our culture. So I think it can be done because we did it that way. We could have engaged a consultant along the way, but we just used our team. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of, to be honest with you. When I reflected on this entire journey, and we were so honored to receive the recognition, we realized that it was our team that achieved the recognition.
And did that, involving your team in it rather than bringing in a consultant or somebody else from the outside, did that also contribute, do you think, to the engagement?
I absolutely do, because everybody at many levels, physician, volunteer, frontline staff, managers, were all involved in our team throughout the 8 years.
We got another question.
We got another question in here from a reader, from a viewer. How was the customer engaged in the Baldrige journey with the hospital? Engagement is more than offering evaluative feedback. I guess that'd be a good one for you to take, Janet.
Yes. One of the things that we implemented along the way were patient visits. So once a patient gets discharged from the hospital, each one of my units brings the patient and family back and to interview them on their experience. If they had the experience, within a month or two after that experience, say, for example, our medical surgical unit or our emergency room, will invite a patient back. The patient may have had a good experience, maybe they had a difficult experience. We bring them back and they sit and talk with their care team, the team that provided the care while they were in the hospital. And we ask them about what went well, what didn't go well, what feedback would they have for us. And often this has led to changes in policy, changes in practice, but we have found that to be an extremely valuable piece of feedback for our teams, and again, intertwined with our Baldrige journey. And that was only one example.
Bob, in terms of tying into other quality initiatives, I mean, is is it your understanding from your examiners and from your own personal knowledge that the Baldrige is something that dovetails nicely with other quality initiatives, or is it sometimes become kind of an either or?
No, it absolutely does not become an either or, should not become an either or, in our opinion. Really, the framework is something that any tool, whether it's a quality tool or other tool, can really fit within. Baldrige gives you that structure that allows you to make sure that the tools that you've chosen to use, you can figure out whether or not they're working well for you. But in our opinion, all quality tools fit within the Baldrige framework because it just gives you a way to make sure that you're using them most effectively. And certainly our award recipients and others have demonstrated very strong use of Lean and Six Sigma and ISO processes, etc. So we certainly think it fits in very well.
I want you to talk a little bit, Bob, about the what do you call it? The Baldrige Collaborative Assessment, where kind of the long and short of it is a company basically can pay to get an Baldrige audit, a Baldrige audit. Do I have that right?
Yeah, sort of. Just one fine point, perhaps. We don't choose to use the word audit because that seems to indicate a particular approach that really isn't what we do. It's an assessment. And in this case, with the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment, the choice of words is important. It is completely unrelated to the award process, and so there's no inherent tension between an organization that's trying to prove that it's worthy of an award and a team that's trying to ensure that the organization is worthy of an award. So in this case, with the collaborative assessment, a team of very experienced examiners will go and visit with an organization for 4.5 days. There is limited pre-work ahead of time. There's just enough to really get to understand the organization. The assessment itself is flexible. So whereas we've already talked a little bit about the breadth of the criteria, with a collaborative assessment, an organization can choose whether they want to drill down into some specific areas a little more deeply, stay at more of a high level and touch sort of all the criteria items, but they get to really drive the cart because this is about helping them identify, as a joint effort, identify their strengths, identify their opportunities, and even jointly develop recommendations for the organization. So it's flexible, it's adaptable, it is, and it's done by some very experienced examiners, and everyone who's done it so far has really just had wonderful things to say about it.
Now, how would you compare that to? And maybe they're not the same thing. I'm a little vague on it, but you know, Janet mentioned earlier that she sent a bunch of her people to get examiner training, and then they came back and started working within Sutter Davis. How would you contrast that examiner training to having an assessment team from the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment come in and look at your organization?
Well, I would encourage examiners as well. I think that's a very good way to embed Baldrige within your organization. So I think that's a wonderful approach to help strengthen both the capability and the capacity to do Baldrige, quote unquote. But the difference really is still having a team come in with that external perspective. Everyone has their own understanding of the organization, and frequently you don't see things that others might notice because it's just not a part of what you've been paying attention to as an organization, and you don't think of it. So getting that external perspective really can be beneficial.
Well, Janet and Robert, thank you for being on the show, but I want Janet, I want you to have the last word. I want you to tell our audience what it's like to receive a Baldrige Award.
I'll tell you what it's like. At first, when we first received the news, it was a little numbing and shocking that we'd been on the journey for so long that we were prepared for the next application. But I can tell you now what it feels like is that we've been athletes in training, and we've finally entered the Olympic arena. And we are grateful to the Baldrige recipients who went before us that we've learned from. And we were really, really happy that we chose to take this journey because we have learned so much, and it is going to serve us so well into the future.
Well, Janet Wagner, CEO of Sutter Davis Hospital, thank you for joining us. And also Robert Fangmeyer, Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks both for you.
Thanks for having me.
That's terrific.
Great seeing you. All right, and there you have it, our exclusive interview again with Robert Fangmeyer and Janet Wagner, talking about the Baldrige from both sides. Again, that was a rebroadcast from the February 14th, 2014 episode of Quality Digest Live. And again, as I said, if you have questions for Robert or for Janet that you didn't have a chance to ask them live on the show a few weeks back, and you want to write us at qdl@qualitydigest.com, we will make sure to send those over to Robert and Janet, and they will get back to you. We will get back to you with their answers to your questions about the Baldrige program. Okay, thank you again for both of them for joining us a few weeks back. Okay, well, we've got a tweet of the week to close the show this week, and this one comes to us from Twitter user Travis Melville, who knows, I can say this, knows how to get our attention. Travis tweets, "So consumed in reading my Quality Digest this morning, I had almost finished my latte before realizing it's not Americano." Well, thank you, Travis, and our apologies for any contributions to any coffee confusion that we may have caused now or in the future. Follow us at Quality Digest on Twitter and tweet a little something in our direction, and who knows, yours may be the tweet of the week in an upcoming episode of Quality Digest Live. Well, that's our show, but I want to remind you that next week we have an interesting week. Dirk will be back next week, and we're going to have a really good guest, auditor, author, and trainer Dan Nelson. He's also going to be writing an article next week in Quality Digest Daily and on our website, and then we're going to have him on the show next Friday. He's going to be asking the question if ISO 9001 reminds you of spoiled milk. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we're going to find out together next week in QDD with Dan, and of course next Friday with Dan here on QDL, so look out for that. All right, thanks all for joining us. Thank you again to Bob and Janet a few weeks back for joining us on the show, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week for QDD and next Friday for QDL. So have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.